Hi everyone. So let's talk about different authentication methods which we can do with Simple Express app or the NestJS application. So I will divide them into a couple of broad categories. Let's say token-based authentication, JWT, which is purely stateless. What we do is we use JSON Web Token for a stateless authentication. No need to store the session or the server. It is ideal for single-page application and for microservices. And how it works: user logs in, user send a credential to the server verifies the credential, generate a token. Now it can be a access token, refresh token. Now a token sent to the client, and the client can store that in the local storage, session storage, or some kind of a cookies, right? So while sending that to the client, you can send it in the cookies or simple JSON response, right? Then client send the JWT authorization header in every request. So you saved that token in the local storage. Now in every next consecutive request, you will send it. And how we do it in the NestJS, we use this NestJS JWT, passport JWT modules to do all these things. Okay, we will talk about that in the code examples with the NestJS, all these things. Now next approach, we can use a session-based authentication. That also we can play with the NestJS. What we do is, it uses server-side sessions to maintain the authentication state. That means it is a stateful. JWT was stateless. This is a stateful authentication. It is common in the big monolith applications and traditional web app because there you manage the session and you store the session also in either in the Redis or database. We can store this session ID at the client side in the cookies and send that same inside each and every request. How it works is simple. User logs in, server generates a session ID is sent to the client includes the session ID in the subsequent request. Server validates the session ID before granting the access. So this also can be implemented simply with the NestJS. If you want to persist the session, then we can use a Redis or database. Okay. Now next thing is OAuth2 and a social login. OAuth2 or OIDC, these are open standard delegated access. It allows us to access, it allows third-party login, like login with Google, login with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all these different accounts. It uses access token instead of credentials. So what happens is, user clicks on login with the Google, redirects to the login auth page of Google. You don't need to manage your own login screen. It will take you to the Google login screen. There you will say, okay, you enter your credentials and then you say allow access to this application after entering the credentials. So you are giving access, you are saying Google or Facebook or Twitter that share my credentials to this application on my behalf. I'm giving consent. Google send the authorization code to the application. Now that application will exchange the authorization code with access token. This is a standard OAuth flow. Access token, then access token is received by the client and then they will use to authenticate the API request. So you see here we are doing a code exchange. Google will give us authorization code. Your application will use authorization code to get an access token, and that access token we use to access our own APIs. Okay, we can use a passport, Google Auth, NestJS passport and all. People these days are using NextAuth heavily. And they get this integration very easily. Integration with the Auth0, integration with the Google, Facebook, Twitter, login with all these different social providers. Next is API key authentication. It is a little different. Like you might have done integration with the Twilio, Stripe, SendGrid, and all these different platforms. What they give you? They give you the unique API key, access key or secret key, right? That you use to do the interaction with the system. This is generally known as a server to server interaction. Okay, how API keys authentication works in NestJS. What do you use? Client includes the API key in the request headers in the URL parameter. Server validates the API key before processing the request if valid access is granted. So let's say if I want to implement a Twilio chat, Twilio video chat, Twilio give me this SendGrid ID, Twilio ID, Twilio room ID. There are SIDs, multiple IDs that we need to use to access the Twilio platform, right? So, you can just generate a secure keys for users. If you want to implement this by yourself, right? If you are building a B2B application and you want to provide your customers, then what you will do is you will generate the API keys for customer and then you can do the customization. Okay, You can make only 1,000 calls per day or something like that. Then two-factor authentication, it is just an extra layer of security through the OTP, SMS, or authenticator app code. User logs in with the username, password, system prompts with the two-factor authentication. You can get either email, verification, OTP, user enters it, and everything is done. So these are like a couple of standard methods of authentication, and all these things, including SSO, we can implement with the NestJS.